Take it from like good dialogue to actual action or actual change and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's we can sit in there and talk a lot as head football coaches. Ultimately, it's going to be presidents and athletic directors that making a lot of these decisions. Really more so the presidents, I guess. For me, it's communicating with Coach Tanner, our athletic director, and Dr. Amaritas, our president, and here's kind of where we are on things and why we feel this way, whether it be transfer portal or whether it be the recruiting calendar or whatever it might be. And we've talked a lot about it, and that's the biggest thing. I think sometimes there's maybe frustration that we sit in those, and I've only been in those head coaches meetings for a couple of years, but just hearing people talk, there's frustrations that maybe a lot of things get talked about as head coaches. I'm sorry, but don't get implemented. So for us, it's don't just leave Destin and not continue the talks or continue whatever we've talked about. Make sure we continue to follow up with our leaders, whether it be at our university or state or conference.
Shane, you're obviously part of Field Storm against Tennessee and then sort of a pseudo one at Clemson a little bit. I guess just what's your kind of take on the policy there and what those brings and sort of what is up for debate this week?
Yeah, that's one thing we haven't talked about in the head coaches meetings, so that one's not something that's on our topic of discussion, but certainly I understand the concerns about it from a safety standpoint, and I saw videos like you guys did of instances last year where guys did storm the field or fans did storm the field, and it wasn't always good. And I was fortunate that the two stormings we were part of were we were the home team, and the other one, we had just won the game, so it was a positive in a lot of way. I've been at other schools where you're the losing team and the other team storms the field. It can be intense. There's no question about it. So want what's best for everyone involved and safety of everybody involved.
Shane, what's been the ongoing discussion with gambling? Right now, starting to see it tick up.
No, we had about a 2-hour presentation on that this morning, just as head football coaches, and I think the people that spoke to us are meeting with the athletic directors and other sports as well. And I know the people that spoke with us are going to come and visit with our student athletes, staff, whoever it might be, over the summer as well. So it was a big topic of discussion, and certainly you see what's happening with other teams and different sports as well, not just in the SEC but across the country. And with so much access available now in a lot of different ways, it's something that is concerning and something that we as coaches and as universities and as a conference better be on top of.
Shane, do you think athletes know that betting on sports, whether it's their sport or another sport, can result in a permanent ban?
I think we need to do speaking Beast personally, must need to do a better job of educating our student athletes on what's legal, what's not legal. I mean, I need a reminder every spring when I get an email from our leaders at the university about don't bet on March Madness. So I'm a 46-year-old, head football coach in the SEC, and sometimes I get a little gray on what's legal and what's not legal and things like that. So I know if we as coaches are, and I'm not the only one. I mean, we had coaches in that meeting room that were asking questions from a betting standpoint, gambling standpoint, what's legal, what's not legal. So if we have questions about it, if I have questions about it, then surely our student athletes do as well. So it's not something that we've never discussed with them. And we talk to our guys about gambling when compliance comes in, or we as coaches, we talk to our players every year about it, but certainly I think we need to do a better job of it, educating, because it's so much, it's not 20 years ago where you walked into a casino in Las Vegas and that's how you placed a bet. I mean, you can place it from your phone right now, and with fantasy football and everything being so prevalent across the country right now, I think sometimes for our student athletes it maybe gets to be where's the line between what you see on fantasy football on ESPN on a Sunday morning and betting on a receiver from wherever, how many catches he's going to have in a game.
How do you feel about a lot of it on the same topic of gambling? A lot of it, you guys talk about education for the players and what the players need to know, but it was a coach who got in trouble in the SEC. So I guess what I'm wondering is how much of the education piece is, you talked about being reminded of it, but what can you guys do then, maybe to be part of a solution of protecting yourselves?
Yeah. Well, in that instance, it's a head coach. So I mean, I'm educated myself, but I think for me as a head coach, it's educating not just our student athletes, but all of our employees. I mean, there's a lot of people that are in our football facility each and every day that work there. We've got 85 players on scholarship. We've got 120, I believe, total on the team, 121. But then you talk about coaches, you talk about student managers, student trainers, the people that work in nutrition, that there's a lot of information that's in our building and in every facility. So for me as the head football coach, I'm going to do a better job of not just educating the players, but educating coaches, staff, whoever whoever it may be from that standpoint. I'm coming to you.
Are they talking about gambling addiction at all, or just
No, the word addiction never came up this morning at all. It's more just realizing how prevalent it is. More and more states are legalizing it, and as more and more states legalize it, it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's certainly big business and something that we just can't bury our head in the sand and pretend like it's not going on around us today.
How do you feel about how enforcement or how tampering has been enforced and how that's been handled the last couple of years?
Certainly can be better, and but I also think it's there needs to be tangible evidence from a tampering standpoint. You hear, well, I think we all know what's going on in a lot of ways, but having tangible evidence and proof and things like that is sometimes maybe harder to come by. But I think the enforcement staff, if you have something tangible you can give them that here's exactly what happened and pursue it, then I'm sure they'll do a great job of pursuing it. But certainly it needs to be better.
How much have you guys dealt with that?
We lost 4 guys that were key contributors for us, or I think it was 4 after the season, and it was strange, in a couple of those situations, based on conversations that I had had with guys 2 or 3 days before they went in the portal, and it's interesting how things happen. But again, rumors is one thing, proof's another thing, and as far as our situation, I haven't had anything where I've necessarily turned anybody in for tampering. But I also think we as head coaches have tried to do a good job. I've had other SEC coaches call me, if they heard about something with one of their players and somebody affiliated with our program, and I've called other coaches as well, hearing different things. And it's not a coach in the SEC calling a player of mine directly, but it could be somebody affiliated with, their program or high school coach or whatever it might be. I had there's a lot of third parties obviously involved. And I think we as coaches try and do a good job of communicating with each other and trying to do things the right way.
Sorry, do you believe that because of you mentioned the third parties, no one really knows what's going on out there, that it almost makes coaches maybe more afraid to actually go report things they hear because they don't know what's happening even with their own program potentially?
Yeah, maybe. I think that's something that you could go back, whether it be transfer portal and tampering or any rules violation over the last 20, 30 years, was it don't throw stones at glass houses or whatever. Am I using that correctly? But, something like that. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I think everybody looks at those situations, and we all try and do things the right way. And we know there's violations for tampering, and we as coaches, we're trying to do things, whether it be the recruiting calendar or whatever it might be, just to not limit kids' opportunities to transfer, but maybe limit the opportunities for tampering to take place.
Coach, you had a pretty well-known rant on Georgia that foreshadowed their success a couple of years back. Do you think with the portal now that helps to maybe close the gap, that other programs can get players and Georgia can't stockpile second, third teamers, or how do you see that trend going?
I don't see it that way. I think we all want to. When I've looked at, not that I've analyzed Georgia's roster, Alabama's roster, but certainly when they've utilized the transfer portal, it's been to bring in like immediate contributors that they expect to come in and start. Whether it be the linebacker that Alabama took from Tennessee or transferred from Tennessee a couple years ago, or I think it was a nickel from West Virginia that Georgia took. Those are guys that I think they penciled them in probably to be day one starters. I think we'd all like to have programs where we develop guys out of the high school ranks, and you develop your own roster. You don't lose them, and then if you do need to utilize the portal, it's for an immediate need right now. Certainly, but I don't see it affecting Georgia, Alabama, whoever in any way. They continue to bring in great players and recruit great players and develop them, if that makes sense. Am I answering your question the right way?
Well, I was asking if the league was able to close the gap because they weren't able to stockpile. But
yeah, I mean, I think you look at the recruiting rankings each year, I think they're still doing okay talent-wise as well. And I don't see any of these high school kids not coming to Georgia. I mean, they had a #1 recruiting class, and Alabama's right up there with them each and every year. So they're bringing in great players. Now, they may not have as many older guys, but they do a great job of developing the players in their program. You see that in the NFL draft every season, whether it be Georgia, Alabama, whoever it might be. But certainly it allows other schools in the league to replenish your roster or develop your roster from top to bottom, maybe a little bit better than it was before the portal, where you had to just rely on the high school ranks to develop your team. I mean, it helped us, obviously, bringing in transfers, not just Spencer Rattler and some of these impact guys, but guys that provided a lot of depth at positions as well.
Coach, in your experience, has convincing a player to stay turned out to be a positive or a negative for you, just in general, through the years?
And not transfer, you mean?
Right. You convinced him to stay, and was he a positive for the team, or did it kind of linger and it was better maybe if he transferred because that was on his mind?
No, I mean, for me, I never want to beg a guy to stay. If he doesn't want to be a part of our program, then go. I don't want to twist your arm to stay and be a member of our program. What we try and do is treat our guys the right way and develop them and be consistent with them and honest with them, and hopefully guys want to be a part of that. And if a guy has an opportunity to go somewhere else for a better situation, whether it be football or off the field, then wish them well. But with guys that we've lost in the portal, when they called to tell me, or they met with me to tell me they were leaving, it was why do you feel this way and what's leading to this, but not begging him to stay and negotiating and things like that as well. I mean, it's if I lose 4 guys, I've got 81 other guys on scholarship that want to be there, and I try to spend my time focusing on them.
Shane, in terms of the schedule, we've heard that teams with a non-SEC rival, the 8 games might be the preference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you see a way to preserve the Clemson rivalry if the conference were to vote on 9?
Yeah, I would want to. I mean, I know how important that Clemson game is to the people of our state, and I think it's great for college football. And so I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose that Clemson game without a doubt. So that's something that we haven't even discussed. Not playing that game is something I certainly want to continue to, and certainly not everybody in the SEC plays a top 10 perennial top 5 program at the end of the season. But we love that from a competitive standpoint. I love it from a rivalry standpoint and college athletics standpoint.
How do you balance sort of the strength of schedule against number of wins against the conference schedule with all of this conversation going on?
Yeah, that's for other people to figure out. But I think when you look at who we play, whether it be 8 conference games, 9 conference games, plus Clemson, plus you look at our out-of-conference schedule coming up. I know we got App State, we got Virginia Tech, we got Miami, just the ones in the next 4 or 5 years. I mean, that's as tough a schedule year in, year out as anybody plays. And this year, I mean, finishing with Clemson, starting with North Carolina, and playing SEC games in between, not easy either. So it's part of it.
Is the NIL market starting to stabilize at all from what you've seen?
That's a good question. I think that's something that, I don't know, stabilize. I think that's probably a question for a year or 2 down the road as we kind of see how things continue to progress and what happens. Thing with NIL is there's no transparency. So you hear different rumors, you hear different things, but nobody really knows what's real and what's not real. So it's hard to say what it is, and it's certainly probably even harder in my mind to say is it stabilizing.
Shane, just kind of spitball.
Transparency there?
I think so.
How do you achieve that?
That's a good question. Something uniform and all that, that's something that we've continued to have discussions on. But certainly if there was transparency and there weren't rumors as well, I think it would make things easier.
Just kind of spitballing the question. I know Commissioner Sankey said he's not seeking out any other members of the league, but I've always kind of wondered about Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
You know a bit about that school. Would that be a school that would fit the profile of the SEC, do you think?
I think Virginia Tech's got great fan base and great support, and getting into the ACC was fantastic for them, and I know what a big deal getting into the ACC was. They've been a part of the Big East, and I don't know. That's a question for somebody else. I'm just happy to be here, Mike.
Question for look at that. I chased him off.
He's on the road.